My name's Dr. Joe Dituri, and I lived 100 days underwater. And when I did it for a couple of reasons. First, I have a PhD in biomedical engineering, and I wanted to do medical research on the human body and see what happens when you leave it in an isolated, confined, extreme environment. Second, I wanted to lecture to school kids and let them know that science, technology, engineering, mathematics, they can be cool. It's not all about white lab coats and beakers and microscopes and boring, right? It can be fun. And third, I got to talk to all of the scientists about preserving, protecting, and now rejuvenating our marine environment. So I'm pretty stoked. I had some great biomarkers, and we can go through all those biomarkers happening while I came out of water. But it was a fun deal, and I encourage you to do the same.
Live underwater for 100 days. Nice. This kind of leads into my first question, Dr. Joe. Your journey going back, you recovered from a traumatic brain injury, I believe, and it was quite remarkable in what I've read. How did hyperbaric oxygen therapy contribute to this healing process, and what role did ice baths, if any, did it have in complementing this recovery of yours?
You are absolutely correct. I did have a traumatic brain injury, an 8mm hemorrhagic stroke, prefrontal cortex, left side. Really, I was out of it. I was knocked unconscious in the car and delivered to a hospital. So very bad off with the traumatic brain injury. And when I came out, I treated myself in hyperbaric medicine alone because I'm a hyperbaric researcher. So when I treated myself in hyperbaric medicine alone, it simply wasn't enough alone. So what we found is that you need many things to help cure your traumatic brain injury, not just one modality, right? Hyperbaric oxygen increases cerebral blood flow. We know that for sure, right? So when you have a hemorrhagic stroke, you have a blockage, and the blood's not getting to where it's supposed to get to, right? So you now have hypoxic tissues. If I can increase cerebral blood flow and hyperoxygenation, increase the amount of oxygen to that area, that's a win. But for me, it wasn't enough. And for most people, one single therapy is probably not enough. So I was driving home in my car. I decided that I was going to do every therapy known to man for curing my traumatic brain injury because I make my living as a clinical researcher for traumatic brain injury. So I said, well, shit, I know all the current theories. I'm going to try them all at the same time. And everybody's like, you're crazy. That's not science. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm trying to get better. I'm not worried about the science behind it right now. I'll do the science later. So it turns out I'm doing neurofeedback therapy, structural energetic therapy, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, physical therapy, chiropractor, red light, beamer mat, waking up in the morning, facing east, watching the sunrise, planting my feet in the... I did everything. When I say everything, I did everything. So I'm driving home one day and I saw a sign. In the United States, we have these signs with polar bears on them and they say, ice, 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 $5. So I said, huh. And this was as I was starting to get better, but I wasn't all the way better. I said, ice, 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 $5. If you immerse the body in ice water, in cold water, what happens? You shunt from the peripheries to protect the core, right? Same volume of blood is still there. If this is the only thing out of the water, you have to increase cerebral blood flow. It's physics, right? It has to work, right? So it has to vasodilate, put everything into your head or the parts that aren't in the core in the head. And that makes perfect sense. So I went home and I did that. Oh, I felt better. And I was like, ooh, this is good. I said, let me see what's up with this ice bath stuff, right? I'm doing it, I'm feeling better. And I'm like, oh, 250 times the endorphins. Oh, cold shock proteins. Oh, 13% increase in brown adipose tissue. All of a sudden, I'm like, wait, I really like ice baths. And I'm not a cold water person. Like, no, right? But it turns out that the more that you stress the body, the human body, you push it into hormesis, you push it into the stress state, the better off you're going to be. You increase the size of the anterior mid-cingulate cortex. And when you do things that you don't want to do, and they are good for you, like endorphin releasing, like all of the, 250 times the endorphins, you all of a sudden have that growth in your anterior mid-cingulate cortex, which is good for you and helpful for you. So all of this is like win-win-win. And everybody's like, oh, ice baths are dangerous. I heard this one time that somebody fell asleep in an ice bath and they died. I'm like, really? Sorry, science wins over bullshit every time. You're gonna have to work that thing through. But there's some really good scientific papers showing some goodness. It's not done yet. We're not done yet. There's a lot of research to be done, but there's some good science there.
You tried everything you made mention to, everything.
When I say everything, I mean I tried everything. People were like, "Hey, do you know that if you sniff an orange in the morning?" that it releases these olfactory senses, okay, right? Like if you say, hey, listen, if you try injecting borax into your blood, that does not make sense, right? That does not make any logical sense to me because I've heard things like that. But little things like using Ozempic, a GLP-1 inhibitor, right? So everybody's on Ozempic to lose weight. We were using Ozempic to increase cerebral blood flow 5 years ago.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I tried that. I tried it, right? It's one of those things. For traumatic brain injury, it can help, right? But there's a whole bunch of little things that when done separately may or may not have a lasting effect. But the synergistic effect of doing all these things together, in my humble opinion, is the way to go, because this is the only thing that we treat that we can't see. I can't open it up and go, oh, look, I'm growing a synaptic pathway. You see it right there, right? You can't, right? So even with diffuse tensor imaging, even though we have great pictures or moments in time, it is just simply not enough. So we're doing EEGs, electroencephalogram research, before, during, and after the ice bath. And oh boy, my master's student that I have right now is really excited about this. And so am I, frankly. And as soon as we publish this data, it's going to be insane. So.
And if I read correctly, you did the QEEG brain scan prior to utilizing the ice bath at some point, and you have the scans side by side, right?
Moreover, I have it before, during, and after.
Well, I'm envious. I want to try this.
And the increase in gamma, right? So you have, when you wake, you have alpha, and then you have low beta, and then you have high beta, right?
Yes.
High beta is like you're really interacting well with people. Beta is just your basic interaction, and alpha is, I haven't had my coffee yet, right? Yeah. Gamma is all the way to the right, and that is the high network switching sort of a brain processes, right? Like you are switched on. It appears that every single person has a multiplicative increase in gamma during ice baths. During ice baths. It is so great. Wow. Look, science wins over BS. We still don't know what that means. We're still trying to figure it out. But so far, the science is pretty encouraging.
Encouraging, but also I read that you're very much into baseline testing, quantifying for all your therapies and treatments that you would perhaps recommend or experiment on yourself or with patients, etc., etc.
100%. Like I said, you need to be able to know where you went. So if you're looking for hormone levels or muscle testing, do the muscle testing beforehand, then do whatever it is that you're doing and either sample it during or afterwards and look for differences, right? It's all about the changes in your body. What is making you feel better and actually better, right?
Yes. And during this journey of recovering from the traumatic brain injury, was there any challenges that you faced during this recovery? Was there times when perhaps you didn't think it was going to plan or things wasn't going in the direction that you would have hoped for? And how did that shape your perspective on the therapist today that you advocate for? Look,
none of this went as I expected, right? I am a hyperbaric researcher, or I started it as a hyperbaric researcher, right? So I'm fixing traumatic brain injury and I'm fixing it this way. And the good Lord's like, look, take a right, go that way. And I'm like, no, I got it. And he's like, no, go that way. And I'm like, no, I got it, I'm going this way. And he finally threw a 6,000 pound SUV at my head to give me the traumatic brain injury. So I had to heal myself, right?
Interesting.
So let me just give you a step back and give you an analogy. If I take this plant right here and I say, hey, what's wrong with the plant? And I ask 3 different people, somebody's going to say, oh, it needs water. Oh, it needs food. Oh, it needs sunlight. Well, I'm a clinical researcher. You don't understand. I'm a scientist. What do? I take out the confounding variables like sunlight and water, and I just give it food because I want to find out which one works best, right?
Yes.
And what happens? You keep it in a closet and you don't give it any water. You take out the sunlight and the water. All of a sudden, food kills plants. That's my determination because that's what happened. I took out all the other confounding variables. I do the same thing with sunlight. I put it in the sunlight 24/7, 365, no water, no food. What happens? Sunlight kills plants. Hold on, let's do it with water now. Water kills plants. You see that it takes, everybody understands intuitively that in order to make this plant better, you need water, sunlight, food in the right amounts. You need everything together for this that makes reasonable sense, right? So how do we treat traumatic brain injury? We do one thing at a time and we go, let's see if it works. And you know what they told me when I was healing? This is the surgeon, the brain surgeon. He goes, what you need is a tincture of time. I said, are you talking to me? Clearly you don't know me. Like you have no idea who you're talking to. I said, that's just the most insane statement. You'll get better with time.
Wow.
No, that is Kentucky Board of Education stupid. It's a silly prognosis, right? When there's something wrong with you, you can do things to make yourself better. You don't do things to hurt you. Like I said, don't just inject borax into your skin. Don't take unnecessary radiological surveys. Don't do chemotherapy when you don't need chemotherapy, right? Don't do it. But if it makes sense, like I said, get up in the morning, face east, watch the sunrise, squint real closely as you're looking at the sun as it's rising. That red light's good for you. That made sense to me. It didn't seem like it was going to hurt me. Grounding myself doesn't seem like it's going to hurt me. Breathing exercises doesn't seem, and all of that stuff contributed, right? So it's not just one thing. I was so desperate, so despondent when I was treating myself with hyperbaric oxygen therapy alone that honestly, I became suicidal.
Really? Wow.
Now, that is a hard thing for a man to admit, right? But I needed that so that it could push me to the point of doing everything combined at one time, which actually made me better, right? So it would stand to reason that it may help people, but you're doing these therapies that will not hurt you. So I'll give you a perfect, for instance. I did physical therapy, right? My shoulder hurt from the car accident. Remember, I got hit here. I flung this way, and then I hit my head against the door on a contra coup injury, right? Contra coup. But my shoulder hurt, and every time I raised my shoulder through the vagus nerve in the body, it reminds you, hey, you remember that traumatic brain injury you have? Hey, you remember that car accident you had? Hey, you remember you have a car accident? Hey, so if you don't fix the body physically, physiologically, and psychologically simultaneously, you're going to run into problems where your body reminds you, your body keeps the score, your body reminds you, oh yeah, you had that traumatic brain injury. And it's like a never letting go process. So you have to attack it. You have to go to war like it's your job. That's my opinion.
No, I'm just experiencing something similar in terms of throwing everything at this particular symptom or few symptoms that I'm suffering from in terms of skin condition or gut health, or it could be parasites, it could be this, it could be that. And I'm similar to you. I can't just focus on one thing and then wait for that to occur. Ideally, that's one of the best options, as you quite rightly mentioned with the analogy of the plant. But in some cases, I just have to throw it all in and hope for the best and see which one.
Right. Now, remember, you need, look, if somebody says, hey, in order to walk outside and face east and put your feet in the ground, that's going to require a $10,000 deposit and $5,000 per session. I'm probably not going to go do that, right? But if it's low cost and it will not hurt you, please tell me why you're not doing it.
Exactly.
Right? Even if it's the placebo effect, it's still getting better perception of better, right? So, yeah.
And being a man who's very experienced with hyperbaric chamber, could you just quite simply explain this in layman's terms to the individual that perhaps isn't familiar with hyperbaric oxygen therapy?
Sure.
And is probably listening to this for the first time and hearing about this.
Yeah, pretty easy enough. So hyper means more than, baric means pressure. So if I have a tube and I fill it with pressure, more pressure than you're at right now, I have you breathe oxygen, I can force that oxygen into the plasma. Now, what transports oxygen in your blood right now? The hemoglobin. So hemoglobin normally transports oxygen, but I can saturate your blood so thoroughly in hyperbaric oxygen, your plasma in your blood, to support cellular respiration without the need for hemoglobin. So you don't even need hemoglobin, which in the grand scheme of things is big, whereas plasma is teeny. But I can saturate that plasma that will weep everywhere with enough oxygen to support you cellularly. It's like, oh, wow, that makes sense. If you have ischemic injuries, if you have swelling, if you have partially blocked blood flow pathways, even in the face of poorly perfused tissue, I can increase diffusion by pushing it into the plasma, and the plasma weeps everywhere. So this is the crux of hyperbaric medicine. It's the basis of hyperbaric medicine. Now, there are many mechanisms of action of hyperbaric medicine, but that's the basic tenet, if you will.
And I read on one of your articles, your really good explanation of a dosage, again, quantifying this and giving one different dosages. Your dosage is like a time plus depth, I believe, when it comes to atmospheric pressure.
So we are working on things at the University of South Florida. We're working on things like minimum effective dose, right? Because most of it is rolling the dice, right?
Yep.
We think, right? There are no drug-funded studies in hyperbaric oxygen therapies. There's no N of 10,000. We don't do a lot of studies because the drug company is not funding the drug. Nobody's funding the drug. It's the trees. The trees make the oxygen. Even though we call it a drug, the trees make the oxygen. So according to the USP, we got to, handcuff all the trees for dispensing this drug of choice. No, it's a bit tongue-in-cheek, but there's nobody paying for that research. And it's unfortunate, and that's why this critical path that we have, that's a very natural path, that holistic sort of a healing mechanism, has not done very well in science because there's just not a lot of science that goes with it. Nobody's paying.
I caught on an earlier interview or article of yours in doing research and talking of traumatic experiences and trauma. Please elaborate on this. I read somewhere where you feel that ice baths, and again, just jumping from one topic to another, but perhaps you can combine ice baths and HBOT again, where it could possibly stimulate the vagus nerve and perhaps help holistic therapists that are into, I don't know, psychotherapy, counselors, life coaches, ones that would work on the mind, a psychological point of view. Do you see these therapies helping in any way, shape or form? Did I understand?
Yeah, so that was an interview that I did with a famous MMA fighter, and we were talking about that. If you can submerge in the ice bath up to here, right, you can chill and cool out the cranial nerves that basically connect the body. Remember, the body keeps the score. You remember my shoulder, right? You can disconnect. I know that's the wrong word. You can basically freeze it, if you will. You can slow or retard that connection such that your brain doesn't remember that things are connected here. And you can do that for a short period of time through an ice bath. There's a procedure known as a stellate ganglia block, which does effectively the same thing, only that works for a period of up to 6 months for PTSD and TBI. Now, if you can avail yourself to treatment through a cognitive behavioral therapist at that time, you kind of reduce this connection here, and this gets to heal without the advent of this reminding you, hey, remember, you're still broken, right? So yes, it's a theory. That's a theory. It seems pretty good. It works pretty well. I've used it personally, but there's not a lot of science behind it. It's a great theory.
Great theory, and it caught my attention for sure. And I like anything that's, as you mentioned previously, about minimum effective dose, but also hacking in some way, shape, or form to get to the result quicker. This neuroscience, psychological, this is really what interests me when it comes to hyperbaric and ice baths in particular. Thank you for sharing. And yes, all theory, but please keep me posted on any developments in that area.
Absolutely. Look, this is the science we're doing at the University of South Florida. Hopefully, we're going to put some good info out.
Talking of info, why we're on the subject of info and resources, do you mind just quickly sharing how the audience could potentially do further research on yourself? I believe you have authored a ridiculous amount of papers and studies. I forget the number, but I imagine...
Well, I don't know about a ridiculous amount, but I think I have like 60 something, publications, but that's not a whole lot in academia, and I've just been in academia for a short period of time. Remember, I was a Navy officer first for 28 years. I would go scuba diving and do other fun things for the military for 28 years, and then I did this. So they can check out the Dr. Deep Sea website. They can Google Dr. Deep Sea. That's kind of the moniker. Deep Sea diver. That's kind of what we went with. I don't know. So these are marketing people that are way smarter than I am. But if you want to look that stuff up, there's some good fun stuff and there's some good science. Remember, we're exploring for life. This is what we do as a society. And what's the next great exploration frontier? I'm too old to go to the moon. We already went to the moon. I'm too young to be going to Mars. So that's not going to happen. Basically, we got to explore here on this planet, explore for life, explore human physiology, what happens, figure all that stuff out now. So that's the kind of stuff that we're endeavoring down. So please check us out, and we'd love to hear from you.
Perfect. And then just to round it off, Dr. Joe, if we were to design just a recovery protocol for somebody that perhaps just suffers from a bit of brain fog, are you able to share? I know that you're not into generic one-size-fits-all approaches and protocols, but are you able to share what you would advise someone to do when it came to HBOT and ice baths on a typical day, weekly, monthly basis, just for someone to feel better within themselves and in some way, shape or form feel that they're eliminating that brain fog that they might be suffering from? You mentioned how the endorphins when you do an ice bath is 250 plus percentage, etc. So
the basic premises of what we know today is you ice bath 3 to 5 times per week for 3 to 5 minutes per time. You should have a grand total of 11 minutes in the ice bath per week. That's what the study is based on. That's what the 13% increase in brown adipose tissue is. I do it before the workout. Some people do it after the workout as a healing measure. I have no idea. I don't know which is better, to be honest with you. So that's ice bath. For hyperbaric oxygen therapy for brain fog, what my PhD student has worked out is that if you're looking for decreases in inflammation and neuroinflammation, that is best served at the lower partial pressures of oxygen, at the 1.5 to 1.75 range. And what I do is I do it BID, twice a day. I recommend it twice a day for an hour a pop, because when you come out of the oxygen, you have this increase or upregulation in a growth factor called HIF1 alpha. HIF-1 alpha is hypoxic inducing factor. So when you come out of the relatively high oxygen concentration, you come back down here where we're only breathing 21%, you induce or upregulate HIF-1 alpha. If you upregulate HIF-1 alpha, that upregulates brain-derived neurotropic factor. Brain-derived neurotropic factor is the lawn seed for the brain. If you water it after that with hyperbaric oxygen, you can maybe grow stuff, right? This is what we're on to right now. This is kind of a thought. That's the generalized thought. That is not hard science. That is so far. PhD student did research. The N is 45. It's not a big number, but it is some progress in the right direction.
And that's twice in one day. And how much would you give in between, time-wise?
Twice in one day, 3 hours in between, 5 days a week.
Wow.
That's where I've seen the best healing.
Perfect. Dr. Joe, thank you. I appreciate your time.
No, you're very welcome. I love having these discussions. Thank you so much. And if you need anything else, give us a call back.